I've been a trucker for many years now, hauling just about everything from local department store merchandise to dangerous chemicals, and even items for the government that I had to be cleared for. I've been working for the same company for about 15 years at the time of this story, so I was a senior driver. I helped on the training side of things, did my share of ride-alongs to make sure the newbies were up to it, following the road laws and company rules. Because of this, that also meant that they trusted me a great deal too. If I did something out of the norm, it was few and far in between, and I always had a damn good reason to do it. This was especially true if I did it without running it by anyone first. I was basically one of the bosses without the title and paycheck, but I didn't mind. That just meant I was looked at for help without the responsibilities of others. So that's why the course of events was so strange for everyone involved. So around the time of this story, I had been doing what we called halfway drops, where instead of going to the destination of the drop-off, I would meet another driver halfway and we would swap trailers and head back. We did this more often in the winter since we were based up north, trying to be nice to our southern folks who aren't used to driving in our harsh winters. On this occasion, we were nearing the end of the quarter and had to get a few more drops done, and I offered to do a double, where I basically just chained them together, swap one, drop it off, pick up another, and head back. So of course, there were times where I would need to stop and sleep for the night. I got to my first swap, and the guy ended up arriving an hour late due to truck issues, which set me back. Not too big a deal though. Then I dropped that trailer off and headed out to get my last one. That one was going to be a bit longer of a drive, so I made the decision to go ahead and stop for the night, or maybe for a few hours at least, to get some sleep. I saw a sign for a rest stop coming up and decided that would be my best bet. As I pulled in and parked, I radioed out that I was stopping for the night. I tried calling my wife, but it rang until it went to voicemail. I expected this though because she worked late nights, so I just figured she was still there. I decided to walk around to stretch my legs and use the restroom. As I approached the building, it looked like there were supplies in there. I could see packs of water, cigarettes behind the counter, candy, yet the lights were off except the one emergency light, and the door was locked. Sometimes I've seen a single person working these and they will close and lock if they go on break or something, so it wasn't a big deal. I walked over to the restrooms and that place had not been kept up with. The doors were nearly falling off. There were no paper towels, and there was a normal bottle of hand soap sitting next to one of the sinks, like the type you would find in your home. But it was empty and looked like it had been empty for a while. So I left, walked back over to the shop, and it was still closed. There was an old rundown looking vending machine next to the ice box outside, which seemed to be off and had nothing in it. And it had some stuff in there, but there was also a sign saying it couldn't give change, so it could only take cards. Like hell I was going to put my card in that thing though, so I just said forget it. But that's why I bring little things to snack on in case of situations like this. So I went back to my truck, had some jerky and trail mix, then got myself ready to sleep. As I laid there, I felt like something was off. I didn't feel like I was in danger or anything, but more like I was supposed to be somewhere or not be somewhere. Or almost like when you're forgetting something but you can't remember what. Just in case my feeling was off, I made sure the doors were locked and that my trusty baseball bat was nearby. I ended up falling asleep though and woke up on my own. I had an alarm on my phone, but something caused me to be jolted awake. Again, I looked around, everything seemed normal and nothing disturbed. I used the restroom once more and headed out, not thinking any more of the situation. I called back out, making a joke, and said I was back on the road and continued on. I was probably about an hour max into the drive when I started getting all kinds of missed calls and text alerts on my phone and several call outs and pages from the radio. I picked up the radio to ask them what was going on, and my boss started going off, asking me where I've been, what I was doing, things like that. It started getting out of hand, so I ended up pulling over to find out what the hell was going on. First, I called my boss to see what happened. First, I will say our actual trucks have trackers on them, so they can get our locations, especially since we sometimes transfer government and high targeted supplies. This also helps in situations where we may end up somewhere we're not supposed to see if someone is doing something wrong or if we might be in trouble. This is where the trouble started for me. They saw me pick up the new trailer and drive for a while. They then said they got a garbled radio message from me, but when they asked me to repeat, they didn't get anything back. They tried reaching out to me again and said that it sounded like someone was just whispering into the radio, and then they got nothing from me. However, they also got notified that my tracker was offline. This has now caused concerns because they didn't know what I said, if I was in trouble, and they had no idea where I was. So they tried calling my cell phone, and when it went straight to voicemail, they called my wife. She checked her messages and saw she had missed a call from me, and when she checked the voicemail, it was just static and sounded like someone whispering again, but couldn't make out what was being said. Between my voicemail and my work calling her, she got a bit worried and tried calling and got the same thing. Not even a response to text. To everyone else, I had just disappeared and they had no way to trace me other than having people drive to the location and follow the road back looking for me. And let's face it, law enforcement had plenty of other more important things to do. So I told them I was fine and had been. I explained that I ended up at a rest stop between these mile markers and explained what it looked like. I apologized for getting everyone worked up, including my wife, because that was a storm alone calming her down, and told them that I was en route to the destination as normal. Once I arrived at the drop-off, I reached back out, letting work and the wife know I was heading back without any plans on stopping, unless it was for gas or food. However, my boss Agatha called me and was asking me about the stop I went to. I explained to her again where it was approximately located and what it looked like, and she said she couldn't find any rest stops in that area. Agatha has been there just about as long as I have, so she knew I wasn't fooling around, but was more so worried about the area if there were scramblers or anything, as it could put me or other truckers in danger. I teased her, saying if she didn't believe me, I could always stop at it again and take pictures and get a better location, but she said not to worry about it. So I headed back out so I could get home for a few days to my wife and bed. On my way back though, it really did start to bother me about this location. With everything looking so ancient, no one being at the actual little shop, and just getting an off feeling, I wanted to find this place again. Like I said, I have been doing this for a while, so I'm used to these roads and directions outside of Google. I saw the exit and decided to make a quick stop before finishing my drive. I did call into the radio and told them I was making a quick stop, and unlike last time, I got a response saying they got the message basically. However, once I took the exit, the road seemed to go on longer than I remembered. Thinking to myself, maybe it's just because I am coming from the other side and this entrance is longer? Except there was nothing else but the road. It just stopped, the concrete and all. There was a huge overgrown field on the side, but there was nothing else there. No building or shop, no restroom, no vending machine, not even a sign showing what the place was called. I was at a loss for words and any explanation. I stayed here less than 12 hours ago, and it was all missing. I looked around to see if I was missing something, but there was nothing there. I even had a signal and had called my wife as I stood in the field, explaining to her what was going on. She told me she wasn't comfortable with the situation and asked me to just leave and get back as soon as possible. What she says goes, so I was off. I snapped a quick photo of the exit ramp in the field as a memory, but that's all I had to give as an explanation. Now, I wish I would have used that vending machine after all. Anyways, I got back and explained everything to Agatha and even showed her the picture of the field. No one knows what to think of any of this, and we all just agreed to make sure we get a response back from the radio before we tune out for the night. And since then, I did just that, and also avoided rest stops I was unfamiliar with. One dimension is enough for me. This is actually something that happened to my father while he was a tow truck driver. He did this for a few years, as far as I can remember, because I was quite young at the time. He worked all different hours, including on call or overnight. Depending on the time or if I was awake, sometimes he would let me, my sister, and my mom ride with him. It was actually a lot of fun. Riding back to the tow lot where they dropped off the vehicles they kept was always a blast too. There was an old lady that worked there, and she always had snacks open to us. They also had 2 junkyard dogs that were sweet as can be. Sometimes I would stay up later when allowed just to try and go with him. We got to watch him load up the different vehicles, and he told us what the different buttons and switches did. Sometimes we even got to go if there was a mild accident, like someone hitting a light pole or something like that. Of course, he's also been called on some pretty bad accidents too, like when cars flip or when there are severe injuries or even fatal ones. These, of course, we were never allowed to go on, and I'm thankful for that now. As I got older, I was talking to him about his experience working there and asked him about some of the worst ones he remembers going to. This one, though, still creeps me out. He said he even remembers telling me and my mom that we couldn't go with him because of the situation. There was a convertible speeding and swerving between lanes on a highway. It was like a main road and highway because it still had stoplights on it. It was also next to an open field, blocked off by the guardrail and barbed wiring. Of course, the highway also has warning lights a few miles back to tell you when the light is red to warn you to start slowing down. Apparently, this guy didn't see those, or didn't care, or something, and thought he would try to run it. My dad said he doesn't remember if he was racing someone else or if he was just speeding. Sadly, there was a small decline before the intersection, and there was a semi already at the light. This convertible must have hit the decline, got a little air, and before they had time to react or brake, probably because the car was partially airbound, they went under the semi, causing the underside of that semi to act like sandpaper. The scene was not pretty, and they were already in the process of the cleanup by the time my dad arrived. However, he said they were just pulling out the body, and from the looks of the accident, he could piece it all together. He remembered this one, of course, because of the gruesome details, but also what he saw while trying to load up the vehicle. He mentioned it was taking longer than normal because they had to try to get the car out from under the semi and then get the car on the tow truck. Towards the end, as he was loading up the car, he felt like he was being watched, so he looked around to see the cops and other people weren't nearby, and no one was trying to get his attention, so he looked over towards the field. From there, he saw a figure standing by a tree that appeared to just be watching him. He just stared at him for a minute to see if he was maybe just a bystander trying to watch what was going on. Unfortunately, you get people like that going to these scenes and trying to get pictures or something. However, my dad noticed he wasn't holding a camera or anything, but just standing, hands to his side. Once he finished loading up the car, he started walking towards them to see what he was doing. He got a little closer and he noticed the person looked like a younger kid, maybe in their teens. He took notice of the clothes he was wearing in case it came up in the future, like a missing person, someone fleeing a scene, or family, etc. As he continued walking, he said he got a page, if that tells you how long ago this was, and when he looked up from his pager, the kid was gone. He looked around to see if he ran off, but didn't see him anywhere. So he went back to his truck, finished up what he needed to do with the authorities, and left. A few days later, he said he heard additional information about the crash and saw a picture of the kid from the accident. To his surprise, the kid he saw in the field looked just like him. He said even the hairstyle and shirt he was wearing was identical. Of course, my mom said he probably saw his ghost, who was trying to piece together what just happened before he moved on, and that's when he left this world. My dad, of course, doesn't believe in any of that, so he claims he probably just saw the kid as they were pulling him out and saw what he was wearing and chalked it up to him being tired. I don't know though. Those scenes have to be gruesome and maybe even scar some people that would see it. But I'm thinking it was this kid passing over. He had some other creepy calls that maybe I can ask him about, but this one I specifically remember. This happened a few years ago. I'm a female in my late 30s now, and I love trucking. My dad was a trucker when I was a kid, and I loved riding with him and sitting in the cab, so I knew I wanted to do the same. I also loved the idea of being able to go across the country for my job, so it was always like a never-ending vacation. I am married with no children, and this was part of the reason. I don't see that working out for us, especially since my husband actually does this with me. So this was perfect for us. On longer trips, we would take turns driving. He would drive at night and I during the day. I loved being able to watch birds and other wildlife while driving and the different sights along the way, but then also be able to enjoy the night breeze while I slept. I also am one of those people that listen to podcasts on murders, mysteries, and unexplained events, as well as things like forensic files. So yes, I may be a bit paranoid about some people, but I think that also comes with being a smaller female. However, I also think that makes me more aware of my surroundings and cautious of strangers. I've run into those truck stops where some of them are just really gross older guys that want to hit on me or catcall, but I don't let it bother me. I always have a knife or my pepper spray for protection, and I'm lucky enough that my husband is right there with me if things were ever to get out of hand. There was one instance in particular that did freak me out a bit, and I still think about it at times. As mentioned, it's normal to get hit on by random truckers, but this guy was by far the most memorable. I got out of the truck and stretched. It was during the day, so my husband was dozing in and out, so I just went into the stop by myself, which is not unusual. I noticed a couple of guys sitting at a table outside of the entrance talking. No big deal. I did notice, though, as I was walking to the door, that one of them kept staring at me. Whatever, I just keep walking. While I'm in the store browsing, I just felt like I was being watched, so I kept looking around, not seeing anything really. So because I can't shake the feeling, I started heading to the restrooms. The place was set up with the entrance and exit doors on each end of the building, and the restrooms were towards the center in the back. So as I round the corner towards them, one of the guys sitting outside comes from the other side and causes me to jump a bit. Not to mention his appearance screams danger. He was wearing overalls, an old stained and torn shirt, and maybe had 8 teeth. He smirks, puts his hand up, and says, "Sorry to startle you, missy." I smiled and said it's okay and tried going into the stall when he seriously leaned against the door frame, blocking the damn doorknob. So I started to say, "Excuse me," or something along those lines, when he asked, "Where are you from?" I definitely wasn't going to be honest, so I told him, "I'm local, excuse me." Apparently, he didn't like that because then he moved completely to blocking the door and questioning me like, "I've never seen you around here. Who you contracting with?" At this point, I was just annoyed and his breath smelled like spoiled milk and feet. So I started turning to walk away when he grabbed my arm. I turned back and he said, "It's kind of rude of a lady to ignore a man that's talking to her." To which I said, "Well, grabbing a lady's arm is not a way to get them to talk either," and shook my arm free. I ended up not buying anything and quickly walked out the door. I noticed his friends were no longer sitting there, but I started reaching for my pepper spray just in case. As I'm walking back to my truck, I had to pass by the side of another truck when he came right up behind me and grabbed my hips like he was trying to pull me back or pick me up. Thankfully, he didn't have time to react to me turning around, elbowing him, and spraying him in the face. He just screamed some expletives at me as he tried to wipe his face, so I just made a dash to my truck. Thankfully, my husband heard the man screaming and woke up about that time, so he was starting to get out of the truck, but I motioned him to stay, that I got it, and we took off. I told him what had happened, and he was upset that he wasn't there, but I wasn't mad at him, nor do I fault him for it. That was the worst it's ever gotten, and the first and only time I had to use my pepper spray. He does tell me to wake him up if he's sleeping if I do have to stop somewhere, just to be safe, and I have no problems with that. Now, to make things worse about the situation though, a few years later, we ended up making another delivery to a location near the same stop. This is one that I cannot forget because of what happened. So every time I see that "Welcome to State" sign, I shiver a bit. So we get to our destination and went to a nearby diner to eat. While there, the TV was playing the local news and they mentioned someone being arrested or captured for a kidnapping. Something told me to pay attention to this, so I started watching it, and as I did, my stomach dropped. I saw a very familiar guy in a mugshot. It was the same guy. He had the creepy eyes, like they were just piercing me through that TV. Apparently, he actually tried abducting a girl, and as he tried pulling her into his truck, she managed to break free and was able to get help. I went to my phone real quick to get more info, and apparently his ex-wife was interviewed as well and mentioned that she left him because of his extremely abusive behavior. The kicker to all of this was his ex-wife and the victim looked just like me. Small build, medium length dark brown hair. I flipped. I told my husband about it and he agreed. The similarities were way too close to be a coincidence. I am so thankful it wasn't worse, but also glad that the other girl was able to get away. I also hope that these were his only attempts and they got him, so he couldn't be successful. Overall, just be careful and stay aware of your surroundings because you just never know a person. I was a trucker for about 15 years. As the years go on, it really starts to take a toll on your body. Literally, you sit in the same spot for hours on end, maybe even 24. The only other thing you can do is eat. There isn't much in ways of exercise that you can do, so your back is usually bothering you, and you're out of shape to do anything about it anyways. Sometimes it can even mess you up mentally, with irregular times of sleep and other things that may not be explainable. I've had weird occurrences in some cities where the locals tell you to avoid these certain truck stops or gas stations due to high theft. I'm looking at you, Detroit. Or paranormal sightings at others. I'm not a believer in that crap, so I usually just hear them out for a little entertainment and move on. Sometimes I may actually stop in those places just for giggles and to tell my wife, as she seems to get a kick out of those. She loves watching all those ghost hunter shows and wanted to go with me on some of them to see if she could experience something herself. Lucky for her, she never did, at least. There was one time though that scared the hell out of me and still does, thinking about it to this day. I was headed to Arizona and I was already up longer than I was supposed to be, but I wanted to try and shave off some time so I could get back home a little earlier for our anniversary. I ended up stopping in some desert area to sleep. I figured it would work since it was right past a truck stop, so people would be there instead, and I wouldn't get woken up by others coming and going, headlights, sound, etc. I am not a heavy sleeper, especially since this job, so it doesn't take much to wake me up, but it gets harder to fall back to sleep. To solve this, I just find it easier to sleep outside of the normal stops. So I pull to the side, get out to stretch and eat whatever I may have as I walk around my truck. I do this just to be able to get up and move and to make sure there's nothing dangling from it or broken. At this point, I remember looking around to see absolutely nothing other than the exit ramp with the single light above it in the distance. It is dead silent, not even a breeze, and I felt wiped, so I figured I'd be able to sleep pretty well. I climbed back in my truck, took off my shoes and belt, went to the cab, locked all the doors, and passed out pretty damn quick. I remember that much. I don't feel like it was very long, maybe a few hours, when I was awoken by a blood-curdling scream. I kid you not, I have never jumped up from my sleep so damn fast in my life. I waited to see if it was in my dream when I heard it again, but this time they screamed help. It sounded like a woman, so I jumped up and darted out of the truck before I even put my shoes and belt back on, looking around for this voice. Yet, I saw nothing. There was not a single car or person in sight. It was still dark. I called out, "Where are you?" to see if I would get a response, but nothing. I stood there looking around, waiting when I heard it once more, but it sounded like it was right behind me. I don't think I've ever jumped so high in my life. I ran back to the driver's side, got in and locked all the doors, turned on the cabin light, and just sat there looking around, trying to process what the hell just happened. There was no way I was going to get back to sleep at this point. I turned on the radio to keep me awake, but thinking back, I don't think I would have needed the help. I didn't sleep anymore that night. As soon as I started seeing the sunrise, I booked it as fast as I could from there. I went to a nearby diner to grab some coffee and watch the news to see if there were any reports last night or this morning about something that could be related, but there was nothing. I haven't told anyone about this other than my wife and a few close friends that now like to tease me about it, but that scared the living piss out of me. My wife thinks it may have been someone that died or was killed there in the past, but whatever it was, be it a prank or a ghost, I guess, I didn't care for it. I will say though, I think it made me believe a bit more in otherworldly beings. So that, my friends, was a collection of scary trucker stories. Interesting to hear the side from them, being all over the place and seeing maybe creepy people or creepy places that we've heard here tonight. So kind of interesting. It's I could see the benefits and the downsides of being a trucker, definitely, but also something I could never do. So thank you to those that do, because I just drive a tiny car and I couldn't drive anything that big. Anyways, if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, consider subscribing. I also wanted to plug again that if you do have a story that you would like to hear on this channel, please please do submit it at mariesfield.com. Always welcome to share your story there, and I'd be glad to hear it. And lastly, don't forget to leave a comment on your thoughts below. And with that being said, friends, I hope you have a fantastic week, and until next time, take care.